Tonight's meeting is not being recorded. First, you have Ali Dori.
Hello, everybody. Just here continuing to cover the meetings and items pertaining to the meetings. If any of you want to speak, feel free to speak to me when you want. My door is open. Those of you who've spoken to me, thank you very much. I hope you've been able to see that I strive to be fair and I strive to be objective. So anyone else who'd like to speak to me, please do so. And to those who do speak to me, thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Next, you have Carol Argula.
Good evening again, members of the board. I'm here to report to you again on the status of my son and related issues. After 13 months of living as a homeless person under your agency's failed vendor services, I'm pleased to report to you that my son has been moved into an apartment. Please recall that my son had been living independently in his own apartment for 14 years until February 1st, 2015, when Mr. Penman terminated family-provided services, resulting in 2 evictions, loss of long-term employment, and my son becoming homeless. My son spent a year moving from motel room to motel room, and finally, your agency has put him in an apartment. But it's not an apartment rented by my son. Your agency has actually leased the apartment for my son. And I'm really grateful for that. It was good to see Mr. Penman's signature on a lease, albeit through his designated representative, Ms. Galarza. But for your information, on the day that my son moved into the apartment, the homeless people and the transients followed him into that apartment. So I have provided the regional center with photographs, etc., of the homeless and the transients and the drug dealers occupying my son's apartment. In fact, the transients changed the door lock on your apartment so that no one can enter without alerting them. The second issue, I want to urge the board to consider how a deaf, intellectually disabled man who lived independently for 14 years and worked productively for 9 years is now unemployed and living in this awful, deplorable situation. The victim of transients and drug dealers who have gravitated into his apartment. And by the way, as you will recall, you are now paying your vendor $10,000 a month. That's a 120% increase over what family-provided services we're offering. And this month, I'm very pleased, thanks to Professor Ali Dori of Saddleback College Journalism Department, I'm now starting to blog on another issue, and that has to deal with the outrageous salary compensation being paid to your executive director, Mr. Penman. Mr. Penman earns nearly $300,000 a year. That's more than the governor of California. That's more than the director of Department of Healthcare Services, who manages Medi-Cal. That's more than Gene Shiomoto, who manages the Department of Motor Vehicles. And of course, that's more than Nancy Bargman, who's the director of Developmental Services. It's more than twice the next highest employee at this regional center. There are numerous survey websites regarding executive compensation. In the handout I provided you, here's a graphic from payscale.com. The normal salary for executive directors, nonprofit organization in Los Angeles, ranges from $40,000 to $147,000 a year, median of $82,000. Mr. Penman's salary is more than twice that. Board, how did you approve a salary of $300,000 a year for an executive director that is so out of range with anything and everything on the record. I'll be back to let you know how my son is doing next month. Please enjoy your training session.
Next we have Rosella L.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I too want to make mention of Mr. Penman's outrageous salary compared to the governor's. The Director of Developmental Services, who oversees 21 regional centers like this one, and also what is left of the developmental centers. I can't imagine how this board could approve that salary for this man. It's so out of line, it's beyond belief. What were you thinking of, people? My God. I mean, you've got the governor of California who makes less than him. The director of developmental services who earns maybe half what he earns? Why would you do that? Why don't you go into executive session and think twice? Cut down that salary. He doesn't need it. He's overseen too many mistakes, deaths, misery of many clients at this regional center. I could mention names, but I will not. But you can find it if you look for it, folks. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you will think about this in the future.